So we've been following the progress of the Israelites from the time they came into the land of Egypt, ending that 40 years of wandering in the wilderness, their time in Egypt as slaves. We saw how they crossed the Jordan River, and the miracle of the Jordan River, very much like the Red Sea, parted, and they crossed over safely on dry land. We talked about the conquest of the Central Hill country, their defeat of Jericho. We talked about the sin of Achan, which caused them to be routed in battle from Ai, and then subsequently atoning for their sin and being able to defeat the city of Ai. And they're staking their claim to the land in Shechem. We talked about the southern campaign, that as it began, the Gibeonites, as they came to them, asked for a treaty, even though they weren't supposed to make a treaty with any of the cities in Canaan. The Gibeonites deceived them and thus made the treaty, and now they were bound to that treaty. So we begin our lesson tonight in Joshua, the 10th chapter. And we're going to read about the battle with the kings of the south. In Joshua, the 10th chapter, in verse 1, it says, "As soon as Adoni-Zedek, king of Jerusalem, heard how Joshua had captured Ai and devoted it to destruction, doing to Ai and its king as he had done to Jericho and its king, and how the inhabitants of Gibeon had made peace with Israel and were among them, he feared greatly, because Gibeon was a great city, like one of the royal cities, and because it was greater than Ai, and all its men were warriors. So Adoni-Zedek, king of Jerusalem, sent to Hoham, king of Hebron, and to Piram, king of Jarmuth, to Japhia, king of Lachish, and to Dibber, king of Eglon, saying, 'Come up to me and help me. Let us strike Gibeon, for it has made peace with Joshua and the people of Israel.'" It says that he feared greatly. But apparently, the fear of judgment didn't make the Canaanites surrender. It made them organize and fight. People today might fear the coming of the judgment of Christ, but they fail to obey his word. In fact, they entice others to join with them in their disobedience. I'm sure Pharaoh had some fear of God, maybe about 2 or 3 plagues in. He knew who God was at that point. But his heart was hardened because he didn't respect the Lord God of heaven. Verse 5, "Then the 5 kings of the Amorites, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, the king of Eglon, gathered their forces and went up with all their armies and encamped against Gibeon and made war against it." I think this might illustrate the fragmentation of Canaan and the land of Canaan as city-states rather than a nation. So we can't really consider Canaan to be a nation, but a real nation with law and a heavenly king was marching through the land. As a side note, there are some clay tablets called the Amarna tablets. They're in Israel. And the tablets reveal an appeal for help against people called Habiru, which has been associated with Hebrews, invaders. These were written in about the 14th century BC, about the same time that Israel was taking the land. We might also note that these Canaanite kings were afraid to attack Israel directly. They chose instead to attack the Gibeonites. Why do you suppose that is? Maybe their fear was pretty great for the Lord. They knew who the Israelites were. They knew all the miracles, the battles they had won. Maybe they were trying to convince the Gibeonites to return to their side. Donald, did you have anything to add?
That's what I would think, is that they were trying to go and if you put enough pressure, maybe you can bring them back. Maybe that's what they thought.
Yeah.
Because they realized they need every person they could get.
Gibeon had abandoned them. Gibeon made the right choice. They had to do a little lying and deceiving to get it, but they wanted to stay alive. Anything else? Any other reasons why they might have done that? Revenge. Yeah. Somebody crosses you, you kind of want revenge, don't you? That's kind of the natural thing. Marcus.
At the onset, it seems like a very opportune time to do so because Israel has retreated back down to their camp in Gilgal,
Mm-hmm.
Which is down in the valley. So they're separated by distance and the time that it would take, the difficulty it would be to march uphill to come to the aid of Gilgal. So if they're going to band together, let's say they're going to attack Gilgal first and then they'll attack the Israelites, at least that it makes a lot more sense to fight them one at a time than together.
Yeah. It's a lot easier attacking downhill, too. Okay, we'll go on. In the 6th verse, and the men of Gibeon sent to Joshua at the camp in Gilgal, saying, "Do not relax your hand from your servants. Come up to us quickly and save us and help us. For all the kings of the Amorites who dwell in the hill country are gathered against us." I guess if Joshua had been a lesser man or a less faithful man, he might have taken this as an opportunity to escape the rash agreement he went into sparing the Gibeonites. Maybe it would have been just easier to let the Amorites defeat the Gibeonites. That would relieve him from his oath. But Joshua was an honorable man, and he was a man of faith. He was going to do what God told him to do. In the same manner that the Gibeonites appealed to their covenant with Israel, how much more should we appeal our covenant with Christ? Save us, forgive us, never forsake us. Verse 7, so Joshua went up from Gilgal, he and all the people of war with him, and all the mighty men of valor. Joshua not only kept faithful to the oath that he had made, he did it with dedication and zeal. He sent his best men to battle. And the Lord said to Joshua, "Do not fear them, for I have given them into your hands. Not a man shall stand before you." So once again, We see the battle is over before it started. Joshua had God's approval and encouragement. Do not fear them was a command, but it was accompanied with a blessing. I will give them into your hands. Not a man of them shall stand before you. So Joshua came upon them suddenly, having marched up all night from Gilgal. So Joshua set out immediately to do God's will. He marched all night, about 20 miles from Gilgal to Gibeon. Gibeon cities. It was about 20 miles. He had to climb about 3,300 feet. He had to march about 8 to 10 hours. I hope I never find occasion to complain about getting up Sunday morning and attending worship after what these people do. Verse 10 says, "And the Lord threw them into a panic before Israel, who struck them with a great blow at Gibeon, and chased them by way of the ascent of Beth Horon, and struck them as far as Azekah and Makkedah. And as they fled before Israel while they were going down the ascent of Beth Horon, the Lord threw down large stones from heaven on them as far as Azekah, and they died. There were more who died because of the hailstones than the sons of Israel killed with the sword." And I think we need to note here that it was God alone who routed the Canaanites, threw them into a panic, struck them, chased them. Now my translation said hailstones. Some of yours may say just stones. It wouldn't matter if it was kidney stones or gallstones. God sent them. It was a miracle, and God did it. And if anyone would have a little trouble believing the miracle of stones from heaven, because some people, I was reading a lot of different commentaries and such about this, and some of them said, it was a landslide. Fell down just on the Gibeonites. You notice that there were no Israelites hit during this battle. And there was one of them that was really way out there. It said it was a comet passing by, and it was the debris from that comet that fell on the earth. This is all excuses or reasons, or however you want to put it. They want to apply or try to attach a natural phenomenon to the acts of God, to try to lessen the impact of God's work on this earth. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Yes, sir. Wes.
Well, just to say, of course, God can work through and does work through the natural means. That's true. But it is funny, isn't it, how that people, I heard an old preacher one time say that that when you try to explain a miracle, it's nonsense. It's nonsense to explain a miracle. A miracle is not a natural occurrence. And trying to find a natural reason for something that's not natural is just misguided from the start. And so, yeah, this clearly is more than just a regular storm. And the Lord sending this hailstones large enough to wipe out an army. I've noticed, and this is, I don't know anything about weather or meteorology, but weather people sometimes get a little happy when they talk about, man, that golf ball size hail out here. And I look at it and I say, well, that's not unnoticeable, but I've never seen a golf ball that small. Baseball size hail. Very few times. Maybe one stone would be, I don't know. But anyway, what you have here is something that just is beyond nature. It's a miracle. And when you get through trying to explain it away, you really have created a scenario that is much more unbelievable than just simply saying God intervened and sent this work, this act.
Good.
People
Good
are trying
point.
to explain away the Israelites crossing the Red Sea, making them almost go through 2 inches of water, on the dry. So how would the Egyptian army drown in 2 inches of water?
Exactly.
That's the problem.
Yeah, we get into trouble when we start trying to ascribe natural. Donald, you had something. I think you
Well,
were.
I was going to basically along the lines of what Wes was saying, this is no doubt a miracle. And unfortunately, that term miracle gets thrown around, in things that happen today. Oh, that was a miracle. No. A miracle, it is beyond or outside the realm of physical possibility. It's something where something has occurred that otherwise cannot happen unless God intervenes. Just saying. And so I just, like Wes said, it's a miracle. There's no, and you can try to discount it any way you want to, but no, it's a miracle.
No, and looking at all the circumstances surrounding this thing, aside from just the stones falling from heaven, it didn't kill any Israelites as far as I know. It seemed to be isolated, concentrated on one group of people. Marcus had something.
I was going to say it also, the route, to begin with, we all, every person feels fear about something at some point in time in his life. God can give you strength to overcome fear and strength to overcome pain, things like that. It's extremely easy, I would think, for him to do the exact opposite to the enemies of the Israelites. To give them that great fear that, just the sight of Joshua cresting the hill with all the rest of them, and they're deathly afraid and run. And I like the fact that it says more died because of the hailstones than the sons of Israel killed with the sword. And if you look at the names of the places, these people have been running for 30 or 40 miles. And God,
That storm just followed them, didn't it?
Instead of letting them get away, guess what they run into? They run away thinking they can get away from Joshua, only to find the Lord. They would have had a lot better chance staying and fighting Joshua than they had the Lord, I would think.
Anyone else? All good comments. I appreciate them very much. Well, if you had trouble believing in that miracle of the stones from heaven, how about the next one coming up? In the 12th verse, at that time Joshua spoke to the Lord in the day when the Lord gave the Amorites over to the sons of Israel, and he said in the sight of Israel, sun, stand still at Gibeon, and moon in the valley of Ajalon. Joshua called for this in all the sight of Israel. He was a man of faith, and he was not afraid to call on the Lord to help him. What keeps us from asking for God's help? Well, God's answer to Joshua was this. Verse 13, and the sun stood still, and the moon stopped until the nation took vengeance on their enemies. Is this not written in the book of Jashar? The sun stopped in the midst of heaven and did not hurry to set for about a whole day. We say a whole day, we're talking 24 hours. There has been no day like it before or since when the Lord heeded the voice of a man, for the Lord fought for Israel. I read a note in Brother Waldron's book about this, and I just wanted to read it to you because it was just humorous to me. Think of the dismay this long day would have caused in the hearts of the Amorites. Here they are fleeing from the Israelites with the intention of running to one of the walled cities and reaching safety. If only it would get dark. The Israelites would not be able to see their enemies and could not keep chasing them. The enemy soldiers, that is the Canaanites, would be able to make their way to safety one by one. But it does not get dark. The sun stays high and the enemy keeps running, and Israel continues to pursue. What a day. A day that would not end, at least for the Amorites. Verse 15 says, So Joshua returned and all Israel with him to the camp at Gilgal. But, verse 16, these 5 kings fled, hid themselves in the cave at Makkedah. And it was told to Joshua, the 5 kings have been found, hidden in the cave at Makkedah. And Joshua said, Roll large stones against the mouth of the cave and set men by it to guard them. But do not stay there yourselves. Pursue your enemies, attack their rear guard. Do not let them enter the cities, for the Lord your God has given them into your hand. So apparently the battle was not quite yet over. When Joshua and the sons of Israel had finished striking them with a great blow until they were wiped out, and when the remnant that remained of them had entered into the fortified cities, then all the people returned safe to Joshua in the camp at Makkedah. Not a man moved his tongue against any of the people of Israel. The capture of these 5 kings was a bit secondary to the unique war of judgment against the Canaanites. And Joshua and Israel continued the slaughter of the Canaanites until only a remnant had escaped to the cities. And no one dared speak against Israel. No one in the camp complained about all the running and chasing they've had to do all day, and none of the people of the land apparently had much to say about this. Because God was with Israel. And Joshua said, Open the mouth of the cave and bring those 5 kings out to me from the cave. Joshua had dealt with the battle. Now it's time to deal with the leaders of Canaan. And they did so. Verse 23, brought those 5 kings out to him from the cave, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, and the king of Eglon. All 5 kings right there before Joshua and Israel. And when they'd brought those kings out to Joshua, Joshua summoned all the men of Israel and said to the chiefs of the men of war who had gone with him, Come near and put your feet on the necks of these kings. And they came near and put their feet on their necks. A great symbolic gesture designed to encourage the warriors. No doubt if there were any other witnesses to this, it would have discouraged the people of the land. What Joshua said next encouraged them even more. Verse 25, And Joshua said to them, Do not be afraid or dismayed. Be strong and courageous. How many times have we heard that very phrase used since the time that Israel went into the land? Be strong, be courageous. For thus the Lord will do to all your enemies against whom you fight. Now, is that encouraging? To know that God is going to be with you and there's nobody in this land who can stand against you. And afterwards, Joshua struck them and put them to death. And he hanged them on 5 trees. And they hung on the trees till evening. But at the time of the going down of the sun, Joshua commanded, and they took them down from the trees and threw them into the cave where they had hidden themselves. And they set large stones against the mouth of the cave, which remain to this very day. What a twist of irony, isn't it? The kings were cast dead into the cave they thought was going to be their refuge. What a contrast to the way Saul dealt with Agag in 1 Samuel, the 15th chapter. God has told Joshua, and he told Saul to destroy all the inhabitants. Now, a little question here. Would there have been any possible good to save these kings? What would it do for somebody?
If the Lord asks you not to save them, then don't save them. You see what it did to Saul. The kingdom was taken away from Saul because he didn't obey. He thought it would be okay to save Agag and the best of the cattle and oxen.
That's the very first good reason to do what the Lord said. He said to do it, do it. Look at it from the perspective of, well, let's just say this unrelated to two nations or two kings fighting with each other. One king overcomes the other one, and they capture the opposing king. Could they not maybe make an alliance with them later on? May not be the only battle they have to fight concerning that king. Be good to have somebody on your side. But that wasn't what was going on here. God told him to destroy the kings, the cities, the people. Any other comments on yes, sir?
Maybe shows us that we shouldn't compromise with sin. And if you look at this great victories in this battle, we see God, we see man, they're working together. It's God's victory, though. God, it's God just wins the battle. But he's got man doing his part. He's pleased with that, I think. And I think there's a lot of parallels to us. Our battles are not these kind of battles. Our battles are spiritual warfare that we have. We got to do our part. The victory's already been won. We got to do our part. He's expecting us to do our part. He's pleased, I think, when we do our part. And we, like Joshua, I think, can get greater. I talked about that faith the other day, that as we get faith, we get more faith. So it's like what we have to talk about wisdom, wise man gets more wisdom, man that's faithful gets greater faith, it seems like. Just sort of relating it to what's happening here to what we have to face, and I think we can look at this and talk about having an endless day. That's what we're looking for.
And who doesn't need more faith and wisdom? And we pointed this out earlier. God didn't need the Israelites to do this. He doesn't need us.
But it's his choice. He wants us.
He gives us the opportunity. God wants us involved in his work. So verse 28. As for Makkedah, Joshua captured it on that day and struck it, and its king with the edge of the sword. He devoted to destruction every person in it. He left none remaining. And he did to the king of Makkedah just as he had done to the king of Jericho. And what I will do at this point, is I'm going to read another Waldron note, if you'll allow me, concerning the verses 29 through 43. Well, I'll just go ahead and read it. That'd be the thing to do. Then Joshua and all Israel with him passed on from Makkedah to Libnah and fought against Libnah. And the Lord gave it also and its king to the hand of Israel. And he struck it with the edge of the sword and every person in it. He left none remaining. And he did to its king as he had done to the king of Jericho. Then Joshua and all Israel passed on from Libnah to Lachish, and laid siege to it and fought it. And the Lord gave Lachish to the hand of Israel. And he captured it on the second day and struck it with the edge of the sword, and every person in it, as he had done to Libnah. Then Horam, the king of Gezer, sounds like someplace I need to live, came up to help Lachish. And Joshua struck him and his people until he left none remaining. Then Joshua and all Israel with him passed on from Lachish to Eglon, and they laid siege to it and fought against it. And they captured it on that day and struck it with the edge of the sword. And he devoted every person in it to destruction that day, as he had done to Lachish. And Joshua and all Israel went with him, went up from Eglon to Hebron, and they fought against it and captured it and struck it with the edge of the sword, and its king and its towns and every person in it. He left none remaining, as he had done to Eglon, and devoted it to destruction and every person in it. Then Joshua and Israel with him turned back to Debir and fought against it. And he captured it with its king and all its towns, and they struck them with the edge of the sword and devoted to destruction every person in it. He left none remaining, just as he had done to Hebron and to Libnah and its king. So he did to Debir and to its king. So Joshua struck the whole land, the hill country, the Negev, the lowland, and the slopes, and all their kings. He left none remaining, but devoted to destruction all that breathed, just as the Lord God of Israel commanded. And Joshua struck them from Kadesh Barnea as far as Gaza, and all the hill country of Goshen as far as Gibeon. And Joshua captured all these kings and their land at one time, because the Lord God of Israel fought for Israel. Then Joshua returned, and all Israel with him, to the camp at Gilgal. I left that map up on the screen, and I realize you have absolutely no hope of reading that from where you are. And I had to add all these cities in there because the map I had didn't have them all. So I just went poking around on the internet and found the location of these cities as best I could. But you see that all of this country in the south has been captured now. We start up here at Gilgal, the initial Gilgal. Apparently, there's a second Gilgal that has been established, and that's where Joshua is staging his conquest from that. It's over here in the hill country. But all the way across, and all the way down here to the Negev, to the bottom of the Red Sea, up the coast of the Red Sea, all the way back up, this whole area has been captured. He's defeated the kings of this area. And that is it so far of the conquest. He has captured the hill country and the southern part of the land of promise. It's all been conquered. So now it's time to turn our attention to the north. That's in Joshua, the 11th chapter.
Brother Allen, just
Yes, sir.
quick, you know, you're looking at this map and we see the basic layout of the Southern Campaign. And he mentions here Kadesh Barnea. Of course, that's where the thing all went sideways. And most folks in this room, you know, in this class, might be old enough to remember the 1980s.
No,
You know, I certainly do. And, you know, that's 40 years ago. And I've thought about Joshua going through and, you know, all these cities, one after another falling. All these kings, their armies, their bluster, one after another falling. You know, the Lord wanted to do that 40 years ago. And I'm sure Joshua knew that. He always was on board. But I wonder, as he saw the Lord's work here, you know, just what a waste. What a waste of a generation. What a shame. And what a warning for me. You know, just trust God's promise and believe it. And there's still that danger. I might turn back, or I might quit, or give up, or lose heart. But you know, God's victory will be had. Whether I have a part in that depends on what I do. But anyway, you know, you can't help but think about it, because these are the very cities they would have attacked first, coming from Kadesh Barnea, or wherever God would have led them around, I suppose, the same way. But the point is, you know, they had this opportunity 40 years ago. Another generation did. And, you know, the Lord was always ready. The question is, am I ready? That's a hard thing to think about.
Yeah, and like you said, God's going to accomplish His purpose regardless of what we do. How wonderful would it have been for this first generation of Israelites out of Egypt to have obeyed God and done exactly what He told them to do. This would be a completely different story by now. Marcus.
It is interesting. Note that Wes brings up, you know, about Kadesh Barnea, it reminds me, Joshua's been through all these places before. Because he went and spied out the land. He's going through, he's striking places with the sword. He knows where he's going and what he's doing. He's been to all these places before, a long time ago. That's something you forget about, you don't really think about, but he knows where the cities are, he knows, because he mapped out the land, spied out the land so that they could take it.
He and Caleb. Donald.
I should also, you know, one of the things we may not think about, but it took them some time to do this. They didn't just march, boom, 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 and knock it out. But, you know, saying God let them have their part, this is a land flowing with milk and honey, but it came at a cost. They had to put the sweat and effort. I mean, God made, God was there, and they were going to be, the victory was there. There's the claim, but it came at a price. Alan, you got to go out today. Well, Alan, and it may take some time. A year from now, Alan, you need to keep on, and we may not get the sense of. This took some years to unfold, but every day you had to be there and you had to do your part. And it wasn't something that just got handed to you. And sometimes we don't value things when, somebody gives you something, but if you work for something to a certain degree, it means more to you. And I think God understands that, instead of just giving it like, boom, there it is, just like when they came out of Egypt. I don't think they understood. Because, things came along,
That's
God took care of everything,
a good point. I mean, there's a lot more appreciation in something that you work for instead of something that's just given to you. Anyone else have a comment or a question they want to ask? We only have about 5 minutes left in this class. But we'll start in the northern campaign. In Joshua, the 11th chapter, in verse 1, when Jabin, the king of Hazor, heard of this, he sent to Jobab, king of Madon, and to the king of Shimron, and to the king of Ashaph, and to the kings who were in the northern hill country, and then the Arabah south of Chinnereth. Chinnereth is the Sea of Galilee, by the way. And in the lowland, and then in the Naphtador on the west, to the Canaanites in the east and the west, the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites in the hill country, and the Hivites under Hermon at the land of Mizpah, that is Mount Hermon. And they came out with all their troops, a great horde, in number like the sand that is on the seashore, with very many horses and chariots. And all these kings joined their forces and came and encamped together at the waters of Merom to fight against Israel. Now we see from this description, this force that is coming out against Israel was probably the most technologically superior force that they had faced up to this time. It was faced by Joshua and the Israelites in their conquering of the land. Here now they're going to be dealing with horses and chariots. That was the most fearful fighting machinery available in the land at that time. You notice the presence of nearly all the Canaanite tribes here in the north. The Canaanites, Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Jebusites, Hivites. Did I leave anybody out? The Lord said to Joshua in verse 6, here we go again, do not be afraid of them. For tomorrow at this time I will give over all of them slain to Israel. You shall hamstring their horses and burn their chariots with fire. That's a familiar refrain, isn't it? Do not be afraid of them. For tomorrow at this time I will give over all of them slain to Israel. Battle was as good as over. God didn't want the Israelites to depend on horses and chariots for their military strength. They wanted the people to depend on Him. He tells them to cripple the horses. It might seem a little rash to us, but He didn't want them to cripple them to the point of helplessness, to hamstring them. Horses would still be useful for farming, but not to the point that they could be used in warfare. I'm just about to go over time, so we're going to quit right here. Thank you for your comments and for your attention.